We have been talking about stablecoins almost every single week, and the reason why is because of all of the big moves happening around the stablecoin market. A lot of people actually don't understand how big stablecoins are becoming, but they're already starting to be integrated within the global financial system, and this is only going to continue to scale and scale and scale as time goes on. Now, this is actually very beneficial for those that are issuing, these stablecoins, but also the networks in which they are issued out on. And of course, you guys already know that I'm thinking about Ripple, RLUSD, and of course the XRP ledger. But a lot of great discussions are happening, and it feels as if Ripple is right there at the forefront of every single one of them. And in this video, I actually want to go over a lot of information on just how close we are to having a player like Ripple, for an example, become a big piece of the US system. So with that being said, welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Nick. For those that are new to the channel, hopefully by the end of this video, you do become a subscriber. So 0.0 Forum. This is an annual meeting, and it's not just, your regular annual meeting. These are some of the biggest players around finance, and they're converging with blockchain. They're converging with major, Web3 and crypto names. And even here we have digital money is accelerating. Stablecoin CBDCs and tokenized assets are reshaping finance. At PZF 2025, explore how institutions are bridging TradFi plus DeFi plus the risk that come with scale. Now, if we actually look at this event, okay, we could see who is a part of this. To confront this reality, over 2,000 of the world's leading policymakers, central bankers, regulators, and industry experts are coming to the Global Finance and Technology Network's annual global policy gathering, the 0.0 Forum, this May. Now, over the 3 days of dialogue and collaboration, we will tackle pressing challenges and explore actionable policy, finance, and technology pathways forward to drive progress in sustainability, inclusivity, innovation, and efficiency across the global financial system. And what's crazy about this is we could see the speakers that are going to be there. We have some very large names. BlackRock obviously is going to be there. We have some reserve banks there. Deutsche Bundesbank, Ripple partner. There's so many big names tied to this event. And also, when we actually look at the partners behind 0.0 Forum, number one, it's organized by major players, but also in cooperation with the BIS, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, and also massive banks. And then also we have some, other partners in terms of like the gold, silver, and bronze area. And then of course we do have community. But if we actually look at the names here, Ripple is one of them. Coinbase, Circle, Bybit, Binance, like all of these big names from this space. But this is an event that's in cooperation with the BIS. Very interesting. The BIS is the central bank of central banks. But then also you have silver, Swift. The Swift network is there. Visa, Temasek. Also you have bronze. Look at these big names as well. Very interesting. Community as well. Now, this is where you start to see some very large organizations, obviously, but nothing too crazy outside of that. But it's just crazy to me that you have Swift here, you have Ripple there, Visa, all of these big companies, even have, UBS, Swiss Banking, Signum. It's just crazy to me that these events are ongoing, and also the themes behind this, right? Blockchain, artificial intelligence, wealth management, and even green tech. But again, when we're really kind of looking at this, obviously crypto, blockchain, it is the future of finance. We know that the global financial system is going to get shaken up by this. But the big thing here is stablecoins. Stablecoins just recently surpassed Visa for the first time in 2024. They are also now a top 15 holder of US Treasuries. And yes, I've been focused on this for a bit of time. Even back in March of this year, we saw an article from CoinDesk. Tether ranks among top buyers of US Treasuries in 2024. The firm said it purchased a net $33.1 billion worth of US Treasury securities last year. So again, we can see how stablecoin issuers like Tether, are becoming a very big piece of the financial system, especially in and around the US. Now, this is very clear even with, some of the recent discussions ongoing from like the US Senate Banking Committee, which is stablecoins have the opportunity to increase access to financial services and reduce cost, but the industry needs regulatory clarity. The Genius Act will establish a first of its kind regulatory framework for all payment stablecoins. Check it out.
I think stablecoins is, if you think about it from a guy who's 50 plus years old, stablecoins is like having a traveler's check on blockchain. And so it creates access across the world, and it also democratizes in a powerful way. So as a kid who grew up in poverty in a single parent household, I always think about how important it is to make it easier for single mothers and people struggling to reduce their costs and have greater access. And the faster we get there, the easier it is for the average American to live their version of the American dream. And so the stablecoin legislation just takes a leap in that direction. I think stablecoin.
So again, we're starting to see a big push on this. We're starting to see stablecoins talked about, on front and center stage. It's very clear. It's very clear that they want to push stablecoins in the US. And of course, we go back to the quote from Scott Bessent, right? We are going to keep the US the dominant reserve currency in the world, and we will use stablecoins to do that. Remember that Matt from Bitwise said that, no matter how big you think stablecoins will be and assets under management, you're probably thinking too small, because this is where we see multiple of trillions of dollars tied to just stablecoins alone. Now, when we think about this, we have to go back to this post here from the 19th from Matthew Lin Y. Ripple is moving to become the primary clearinghouse of US Treasury markets. If this becomes a reality and settlement moves through the XRP ledger, daily volume will be around $6 trillion. If we look into this, we have development in central clearing in the US Treasury market from February of this year. In December of 2023, the SEC adopted rules intended to expand central clearing of Treasury security and repo transactions. Please comment on developments in the process of implementing these rules. How do you expect the sponsored access and agent clearing models outlined by the FICC to be used in direct participants? And it just goes on to, label a few questions here. Now, we have over here the scale of the markets, scope of cash and repo markets. The US Treasury cash and repo markets have more than $6 trillion in daily activity, the majority of which is not centrally cleared. According to a recent industry survey by the FICC, daily Treasury clearing activity is expected to increase by approximately $4 trillion each day. This is wild. Now, over here, we have designing DLT and blockchain for tokenized treasuries framework elements, establishing a framework that encourages trust and industry-wide buy-in with the necessary, will be necessary for digital assets and distributed ledger technology to scale. Fraud, scams, and theft have been growing proportionately with the digital asset market, eroding trust in the underlying technology. Now we have the DTCC principles to building a secure digital asset settlement ecosystem, legal certainty, regulatory compliance, resiliency and security, safeguarding customer assets, connectivity and interoperability, operational scalability. Now, why do I think that Ripple is like a top candidate for this? Right? Because we already know that DLT and blockchain is being tapped in a big way for tokenized treasuries. We know that they want to tokenize the debt. We know that they want to tokenize every single thing of value on chain. So where are we looking? Are we just looking at Ripple because we're biased here and we want XRP to pump and, this, that, whatever? You could argue that. But you could also look at the facts. And this takes me back 1 year ago to April 24th of 2024. This got posted by Subjective Views, Ripple and Stellar, and the U.S. Department of the Treasury. This is that roundtable discussion that I keep going back to because it is so significant. Because this is with Nellie Liang, under Secretary for Domestic Finance, U.S. Department of the Treasury, where the discussion was on the technical and regulatory requirements for upgrading the legacy capabilities of central bank money, exploring the potential implications for consumers, investors, and businesses. They also delved into the long-term vision for the integration of CBDCs, tokenization, and stablecoins into the broader US financial ecosystem, including potential benefits for economic growth and resilience. And I am 100% sure that they brought up the idea of tokenizing US treasuries and US debt. And what's crazy about this is if we go back just a few days prior to this meeting, by the way, this meeting was also happening right around the same exact time that RLUSD was getting announced. We have remarks by Undersecretary for Domestic Finance Nellie Liang, modernizing U.S. money and payments, technological and regulatory considerations at the Peterson Institute for International Economics. If we actually look into this, okay, and we just go down to the bottom, because again, we already know all of the discussions ongoing within this are very crucial to focus on. Like, for an example, like fast payment systems and tokenization and how all of this is accelerating. The conclusion really kind of wraps everything up for us. We have here to summarize adoption and R&D of new payment technologies, faster payment systems, and tokenization is accelerating. The US should prioritize modernizing payments with both technologies and update the regulatory framework to reduce risk and promote adoption of innovation. Potential gains are significant and risk of not modernizing are rising. Modernization and greater efficiency supports further business model innovation and advances equity, but importantly supports US global financial leadership through cross-border payment arrangements and use of economic and national security tools. Finally, while any future tokenized money and payment system likely would be built on distributed ledger technology, it would still need to be supported by many of the same factors that support the smooth functioning of today's systems. These factors include central bank money as a safe wholesale settlement asset and consistent prudential oversight of banks and other private sector payment intermediaries. So this is coming from Nellie Liang, where she's addressing how all of this is accelerating, and now the US should prioritize, modernizing payments with both technologies and also update the regulatory frameworks behind this. This was back in 2024. Today, we now know everything around this is accelerating. We are starting to see a push on legislation around stablecoins. We are now starting to see a push on adopting and accepting stablecoins within the US. They want to tap into stablecoins in a huge way. And this is where I look, at Tether and how successful Tether has been. We already know that Tether has been one of the top purchasers of US treasuries, even going back to 2024. And then we look at RLUSD. Why do we look at RLUSD? Well, because we know Brad Garlinghouse has stated that RLUSD will be one of the top 5 stablecoins by year end. We already know that RLUSD is sitting pretty at about over $293 million worth of market cap. And the monthly transfer volume and the holders and just the overall gains here have been very significant. And I do question, if Ripple is really going to be successful in that top 5 push, how fast do you think they become, top 4, top 3, top 2, potentially even top 1? Like, if we're thinking about how fast RLUSD has already grown, I do think that within a year from now, this is going to look completely different. And this is where we start to see Ripple becoming more and more of an important name. Why? Well, because stablecoin issuers are now going to be the main holders of US debt. I don't think that there's going to be a call for concern about, who's the largest holder of US debt? Is it China? Is it Japan? I don't think that we're going to have to worry about that anymore, because what we are going to do is incentivize these stablecoin issuers, because these stablecoins are backed by US dollars and other cash equivalents, including, of course, treasuries, which is debt. When we think about what's going on here, yeah, we're seeing a big push around the stablecoin market. But just like Matthew is saying over here, we are now starting to see a much bigger picture unfold here where, yeah, these names could become, a primary clearinghouse of US Treasury markets, because, these are big players that are already holding, these types of products already to back their stablecoin initiatives. So this would make a lot of sense. This would be $6 trillion in daily activity. And we're not even talking about like the FX market and things like that, but they've already been in discussion with some of the big top, dogs around these markets and around the Treasury market for the US. I mean, it's kind of crazy to look at just how big this space has grown just around stablecoins alone, and the history in which they are making right now. This is a huge update. This is a huge deal, and I think everyone needs to focus on stablecoins, especially ones like RLUSD that are completely regulated, completely compliant, and the underlying network in which they are issued out on, in this case Ethereum and XRP, I think that these are going to be very successful networks because of the stablecoin initiatives. And also, by the way, if we actually look at US Treasuries, about $6 billion worth are already on chain. In terms of stablecoins, the stablecoin market continues to rise. Right now, $227 billion, all-time highs roughly. You can see the monthly transfer volume, $2.10 trillion. This is no joke, but that's why we're looking at the top 5 here. And to get into the top 5, it's not going to be easy. But I do think that RLUSD could quickly gain pace here and become a top 5 player, and also eventually become, maybe the number 1. It would make a lot of sense, especially with all the connections that Ripple does have. But with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, definitely leave a like, subscribe, to notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, this has been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.